My beloved child, before you decide this message is just another story, stay with me for a moment. Last night, something happened that no one expected. The person who has been trying so hard to appear strong suddenly couldn't hold themselves together anymore. In front of the very friends who always believed they had everything under control, their voice began to shake. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward them as tears filled their eyes. No one interrupted because they knew this wasn't ordinary pain. It was the kind of silence that comes before a truth changes everything. Then, with trembling hands, they whispered, "Listen. But before they could finish, emotion completely overwhelmed them. Their friends had never seen them like this. They realized this hidden burden had been growing for far longer than anyone imagined. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because what stopped those words from coming out is connected to someone they think about far more than they admit, and that someone is you." No one laughed. No one judged. Instead, their closest friend quietly walked over and asked a single question: "How long have you been carrying this alone?" That question broke the final wall around their heart. They confessed they had been pretending for so long that even they forgot what honesty felt like. They admitted that every smile had been hiding regret, every distraction had been covering a memory they couldn't escape. They said there wasn't a single day when your name failed to cross their mind. They weren't asking for sympathy anymore. They were exhausted from running away from emotions they could never truly leave behind. This may resonate as we continue, because sometimes the loudest confession is the one that almost never gets spoken. The most surprising moment came next. One of their friends looked directly at them and said, "If your heart keeps pulling you toward the same person, maybe it's trying to tell you something you've been refusing to hear." Those words changed the atmosphere completely. Your person lowered their head and admitted they had been fighting their own feelings instead of facing them. They confessed they kept convincing themselves it was too late, that too much had happened, that the opportunity had already disappeared. Yet every attempt to move forward somehow led them back to the same thoughts, the same memories, the same unanswered questions. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization became the turning point they never expected. As the night grew quieter, everyone around them understood this wasn't just about missing someone. It was about finally accepting a truth they had hidden even from themselves. They realized that silence had never healed them. It had only delayed the conversation their heart wanted to have. For the first time in a long while, they stopped pretending to have all the answers. Instead, they admitted they were afraid of what would happen if they kept ignoring what they truly felt. That confession wasn't weakness, it was the beginning of courage. Stay with me for a moment, because the next step they are preparing to take may become the most unexpected chapter of this entire story. Before everyone left, one final sentence echoed through the room. Their closest friend quietly said, "You still have a choice. Don't let fear write the ending." Those words stayed with your person long after the conversation ended. They walked away carrying something different, not certainty, but hope. A hope they thought had disappeared long ago. Whether this reflects your own situation or simply serves as a reminder, the message is clear. Some people spend years hiding what matters most, until one honest moment changes everything. And last night may have been the night your person's heart finally stopped hiding from its own truth. A new morning arrived, but nothing inside your person felt the same. The tears from last night had stopped, yet the emotions had only grown stronger. They replayed every word spoken by their friends, especially the moment they almost finished that sentence, "Listen. It wasn't the unfinished words that haunted them, it was the truth behind them. For the first time, they realized they could no longer hide behind excuses or pretend everything was fine. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because what happened after that emotional night surprised even the people closest to them. One friend quietly told them, "If this message is touching your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who may need hope today, and if you're enjoying this journey together, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next." Those words weren't about a video, they were about making sure meaningful messages continue to reach. Later that day, your person found themselves staring out of a window, completely lost in thought. Every memory returned with incredible detail, the conversations, the smiles, the moments they once thought were ordinary but now felt priceless. They finally admitted to themselves that they had spent too much time waiting for the perfect moment, to be honest. The truth is, perfect moments rarely arrive on their own. They are created by courage. Stay with me for a moment, because the next realization changed the direction of their entire day. They understood that fear had been making decisions on behalf of their heart, and that fear had never brought them peace. Then something unexpected happened. One of their friends sent a simple message that read, "Stop asking yourself what could go wrong. Ask yourself what could finally go right." Those words landed differently this time. Instead of dismissing them, your person read the message again and again. This may resonate as we continue, because they suddenly recognized a pattern. Every time they tried to move on, life somehow reminded them of you in the smallest, most unexpected ways. A familiar song, a familiar place, even a passing conversation seemed to point back to the connection they had been trying so hard to ignore. They could no longer convince themselves it was just coincidence. By evening, they made a quiet promise to themselves. No more pretending. No more running from feelings they had buried for so long. They weren't promising instant answers or dramatic changes overnight. They were promising honesty. And sometimes, one honest decision becomes the beginning of an entirely different future. Something huge is waiting for you, because once someone stops hiding from the truth inside their own heart, every choice they make begins to carry a different kind of purpose. Before the day ended, your person whispered something they had never been brave enough to say aloud before. It wasn't spoken to impress anyone. It wasn't spoken because someone demanded it. It came from the deepest place within them, a place they had kept locked away for far too long. In that quiet moment, they finally accepted that some connections never disappear simply because time passes. They remain, patiently waiting for honesty to replace fear. And what they decide to do next is something no one around them saw coming. Everything became even more unexpected the following night. Your person couldn't sleep. They kept replaying the conversations with their friends, but this time they weren't remembering the tears, they were remembering the silence that came afterward. It was in that silence they finally heard the truth they had been avoiding for so long. Stay with me for a moment, because what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. And somehow even more powerful. They reached for an old notebook and began writing thoughts they had never shared with anyone. Every sentence brought them closer to admitting what their heart had known all along. As the pages filled, a surprising pattern appeared. Every plan they had made for the future somehow carried a memory connected to you. They realized they had been trying to build tomorrow while pretending yesterday had never mattered. But the heart doesn't erase meaningful moments simply because we ask it to. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because your person suddenly understood that they weren't searching for new answers anymore. They were finally accepting the answers that had been waiting inside them from the beginning. The unfinished sentence from that emotional night now made perfect sense. They hadn't stopped speaking because they had nothing to say. They stopped because saying it aloud would have changed everything. Just before sunrise, they received another message from one of the friends who had witnessed their emotional moment. It simply read, "Don't let another day pass carrying words that deserve to be heard." They stared at those words for several minutes without replying. This may resonate as we continue, because they finally realized something important. Courage isn't about never feeling afraid. Courage is choosing honesty even when your voice shakes. That realization gave them a peace they hadn't felt in a very long time, and for the first time in months, they stopped imagining the worst possible outcome. Then came the moment that no one expected. Your person stood in front of a mirror, looked into their own eyes, and quietly completed the sentence they couldn't finish the night before. Listen. I'm tired of hiding how I truly feel. The weight they had been carrying suddenly became lighter. They weren't pretending anymore. They weren't fighting their own heart anymore. Something huge is waiting for you, because the moment someone stops hiding from the truth, their next decision is often the one that changes everything. Before walking away, they smiled, not because every problem had disappeared, but because they finally understood that honesty opens doors fear can never unlock. They knew there were still conversations ahead, still questions waiting to be answered, and still choices that required bravery. But this time, they wouldn't let silence decide their future. The next step they are preparing to take may surprise everyone around them, because once a heart chooses truth over fear, nothing remains the same. The next morning carried a different kind of energy. Your person wasn't rushing anymore. For the first time in a long while, they felt calm enough to listen to their own heart instead of the noise around them. They remembered every word their friends had spoken and realized those conversations had not been an ending, they had been the beginning of a completely new chapter. Stay with me for a moment, because the decision forming inside them was becoming stronger with every passing hour. And if this story has kept you with us so far, consider sharing it with someone who could use a little hope today, and subscribe so you don't miss the final chapter of what happens next. Later that day, one friend asked a simple question that no one else had dared to ask. If you had one chance to speak without fear, what would you say? Your person didn't answer immediately. Instead, they smiled softly, looked down for a moment, and finally admitted that the hardest battle had never been with circumstances, it had been with themselves. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because they had finally stopped searching for reasons to stay silent. They were now searching for the right moment to speak with honesty, kindness, and courage. As the sun began to set, something unexpected happened. They found themselves standing in a place that reminded them of happier times. Instead of feeling regret, they felt gratitude. Every memory that once brought sadness now carried a lesson. Every unanswered question had shaped them into someone more patient, more understanding, and more willing to face the truth. This may resonate as we continue, because they realized that meaningful connections are not measured by how perfect the journey is, but by how deeply they change the people involved. Something huge is waiting for you, and your person could feel that the next chapter of their story was closer than ever. Before the day ended, they took one slow breath and made a promise they intended to keep. No more hiding. No more letting fear speak louder than hope. Whatever happened next, they wanted their choices to reflect who they truly were, not who fear had convinced them to become. The tears from that unforgettable night had turned into quiet determination. And somewhere deep inside, they knew that the conversation they had been postponing for so long was finally about to happen. As they looked up at the evening sky, one final thought crossed their mind: sometimes the greatest turning point doesn't arrive with noise or celebration. It begins with one honest decision made in complete silence. That silent decision had already been made. The only thing left now was the moment when the truth would finally be spoken aloud. And when that moment arrives, everything you've heard so far will make perfect sense. The moment finally arrived. There was no crowd, no dramatic scene, and no perfect setting, only your person standing quietly, carrying a heart that had been waiting far too long to be honest. They took a deep breath and remembered the night they broke down in front of their friends. Back then, they couldn't finish the sentence. But now, they finally understood why. Stay with me for a moment, because the words they were about to accept within themselves had the power to change everything that came after. They closed their eyes and gently completed the confession that had remained unfinished for so long: listen. I'm someone who never truly stopped caring. Those weren't words of regret, they were words of freedom. In that instant, they felt the weight of months, perhaps even years, begin to lift. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because they realized the greatest battle had never been about distance, timing, or circumstances. It had always been about finding the courage to be honest with themselves before expecting anyone else to understand their heart. From that day forward, they stopped asking, "What if it doesn't work?" Instead, they began asking, "What if this is the opportunity I've been waiting for?" That single shift changed everything. They no longer allowed fear to control their choices. They chose patience over panic, hope over doubt, and truth over silence. This may resonate as we continue, because sometimes life doesn't change in one dramatic moment. It changes through one sincere decision that quietly reshapes every day that follows. Then came the realization that brought peace to their heart. Not every meaningful connection follows the path we imagine. Some journeys require growth before reunion, understanding before conversation, and courage before answers. Something huge is waiting for you, because your person now believes that whatever happens next should come from a place of honesty rather than fear. They are no longer hiding behind unfinished sentences or unspoken emotions. They are preparing to move forward with a heart that is finally open. And that is where this chapter comes to a close. The tears that began this story became the beginning of healing. The unfinished confession became a promise to live with honesty. Whether this message reflects your own life or simply encourages you to reflect on your relationships, remember this. The strongest hearts are not the ones that never break, they are the ones willing to speak the truth after they have been broken. Sometimes, one honest moment is all it takes to begin an entirely new chapter. The story didn't end with that confession, it quietly began again. Days passed, yet your person noticed something had changed inside them. The heaviness they had carried for so long was gone. In its place was a calm they had almost forgotten existed. Stay with me for a moment, because the final piece of this journey isn't about a miracle appearing overnight. It's about what happens when someone finally chooses truth over fear and hope over silence. One evening, while reflecting on everything that had happened, they smiled to themselves. They realized they no longer needed to hide behind unfinished words or unanswered questions. The sentence that once ended with, "Listen, I'm," had become complete. Not because someone else finished it for them, but because they finally had the courage to finish it themselves. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because they discovered that the greatest transformation begins within the heart long before anyone else can see it. Then came one last conversation with the same friends who had witnessed that emotional night. They looked at your person and quietly said, "You seem different." This time, your person smiled with confidence and replied, "I am different. I'm no longer running from what matters most." No tears followed those words. No fear remained behind them. Only peace. This may resonate as we continue, because every meaningful journey reaches a point where healing becomes stronger than hesitation. Something huge is waiting for you, not because the future is guaranteed to unfold a certain way, but because every new beginning starts with a single honest step. Your person now understands that some answers arrive only after we stop forcing them. Some doors open only after we stop fearing what's on the other side. Whatever tomorrow brings, they are ready to face it with honesty, kindness, and a heart that is no longer hiding. And if there is one message this entire story leaves behind, it is this: never underestimate the power of one truthful moment. A single conversation can restore hope. A single choice can change direction. A single act of courage can rewrite an ending you thought was already written. Thank you for staying until the very end. Sometimes the most powerful revelation isn't discovering someone else's heart, it's realizing that healing begins the moment we stop hiding our own.